We have had a good response with our charcoal bluing video we stuck up there, and I'm glad it's being able to help some folks. There was some questions that are coming that we've tried to correspond with those folks, but I'd like to throw just a little additional thing. I'm trying to cover all, at least the things I think I may have missed. One was how we prep the barrels. Here we have a barrel I've had in the shop for a while. It's coming straight from the manufacturer, and the way I start out with a mill file. This one's a Mill Bastard. It's a Nicholson. I have no idea. But what I do is when I get a brand new file like this, I write on it gun barrels or barrels. This file doesn't do anything but just work on gun barrels themselves. And so you can just start lightly smoothing off, as you can see. And you'll see where you'll pick up some of the mill marks. Many of the CNC barrels now have a little bit of a cup to them. In the original guns back in the 18th and 19th century, many guns were made swamp barrels, which we're accustomed to, which are hand forged. They actually hammered a lot of the flats in the swamps, and then they went through and they draw filed the top. There was a point where barrels were being mass produced in mills, and they had big, large grinding stones, and they would put these things in a chuck and run them across. And you can tell when you take an old original barrel out whether it was done on one of those millstones, because it'll actually have a hollowness very much like some of the CNC things we see today. And when you're draw filing, you'll see these low spots, this center spot. My goal is I try to flatten the flats all out, and then I take just the edge corner off of it, because I don't particularly like a barrel that has sharp edges. I don't particularly like a gun that has sharp edges on the wood or any of the metal components. I like to soften things out, but that's your choice. So you can see I'm going one direction. I'm not sawing back and forth. The only thing you're doing is loading up your file, and you're dubbing your teeth off. I just want to lightly go through, taking my thumb and pressing it. I'm left-handed, so for somebody right-handed, it'd be opposite way. But we're just going through like so. And then at that point, I use sharpening stones. This is a brand new one, have never used before, but this is the one I've used for years. And you can see where it's cupped a little bit, but I move around on the stone to get a different surface. Also, we're using the finer edges. And then this is another stone I've just started. We dip it in water, and I know you don't want the water in when you're getting ready to start browning or bluing, or browning, either one, it doesn't matter. But you try to take it off, and this you can saw back and forth on. And it gives you a nice surface. The thing is, you want to be moving around on your stone, otherwise you're going to get cupped areas like this old guy over here. And so move around on your stone. I like using stones much better than sandpaper. Sandpaper, even on a block, like this soft block here, will roll the edges. You'll end up not cutting down the same across. This gives you a nice chance to have a nice flat surface. And you can just come back and forth, dip it off, clean it out, and polish the whole thing up. And you're not making swirls, you're making straight up and down linear lines on your barrel. Then when I clean it, if you want to go to a higher grit, you can always go to a smoother one. You just want to make sure not to have any dust or anything that's going to make a scratch in the middle of your smoother grit polishing. And I just take my time working the whole barrel. I normally work one flat out, come back, pick the next one up. And when we're done, we use a really good cloth that's all cotton or linen. You want something that has no resin, no synthetics, is my choice. So there's pretty much a polished barrel. We'll pretend the rest of the flats are all polished. But when we get ready to do this and prep it to put it into the charcoal, I take the breech plug out of it. Everything's cleaned up. I go through and I clean the inside really well with, here again, something that has no oil. Get all the oil and all the residue out of the inside of the bore. Same thing with the breech plug. Then I take a torch heat the breech plug up a little bit. Make sure to burn out any oil that's in the threads, because if you put in a touch hole liner where there's oil in those threads, or you got oil underneath a sight. Also, that was another question. I blued the rifle, which I'll show you here in a minute, with all the sights in it. The brass sight was in the front, the steel sight was in the back. Everything stays tight. I've never had any issues with anything loosening up during the charcoal bluing. We did talk about silver solder letting loose, soft solder definitely letting loose. You don't want to use those. As far as being able to solder tenons on the barrel at a later time, you may be able to get away with that without discoloring the bluing, and that's possible. I have never done that. I tend to use either a dovetailed tenon or a staked in style tenon. It doesn't matter what you're using. The main thing is, if you're doing a dovetailed tenon that's going through, you want to make sure there's no oil underneath of it, because that oil will leach out when the heat gets to it. After we've polished it up and it's good, we come back with a torch just before it goes into the trough. And then we just chase the moisture out. And you see how it's just starting to color it out. Not color, but your main thing is you're just chasing that moisture line out of your barrel. So before it goes in that trough, you have chased the moisture out, and you're chasing it out of the inside of the bore as well as the outside at the same time. And I just walk it down the barrel and make sure. Now here we've got a spot, I hope that shows that the moisture's on the top, a bubble of water, and that will end up making a spot. And that will show up in your bluing when it's all done. So the goal is come through with a mill file, clean it up really, really well. Little sidebar, before I set a barrel in a piece of wood, the first thing I do is I go through and I smooth all my side flats. I do my two sides. Normally I don't mess with the top three. The reason is because I don't want to lose fit. Once I clean this up, I don't want to lose any fit from wood to metal as far as the barrel channel itself. So I tend to do that beforehand, clean all those up. Sometimes you'll nick a top or something. That's why I don't clean up these top three flats until the time comes that we're pretty much done the rifle, getting ready to put sights on it, and go ahead and clean all that. As far as polishing it, you can roll through and take care of all this. So that's pretty much the prep side. I take the breech plug out of the gun. I use that as my test piece, so it's in the end of the trough that I can pull it up and take it out, see what the color is looking like. I do not stuff charcoal in the barrel. I find that I think it's a waste of time, but hey, you do it the way you want. And then the weld wire is just simply just a thin gauge welding wire. You can use any type of wire, it doesn't matter. And what I do is I hook two together. I bend the tips up like that, and then I bend one like that. And that gives you something to get a hold of. So that's running through the inside of the barrel from one end to the other to be able to pick up the barrel without touching it. So the key is, do not touch the barrel after you've gone through and done what we've done here, where we've polished it, cleaned it. Also, I clean the bottom of the barrel up as well. I don't always polish to the stone honing, but I definitely go on it and clean it off. You can use sandpaper if you want, because it's not as important, but normally I just use the stones because I just like the surfaces that I'm getting. It doesn't take that much more to straighten all those out and pull that together. So that is where we are as far as cleaning and prepping the barrel for the charcoal. And also, don't use anything that has any synthetics in it. That's pretty much where we are. And you're just brushing it off, and that way, as it's getting ready to be prepped, once you warm this barrel and it goes into the charcoal, hopefully you've gotten all the moisture out of the barrel underneath the tenons. Everything's clean when it goes in. I've heard of guys using acetone to go over the barrel. I don't particularly like any type of a petroleum anything. If you can put it on and you see any kind of a mottling or blotching, I do not like that. Also, your water, this water's kind of filthy dirty. I start out with absolutely crystal clear water when we're polishing to that final stage. And then when you're cleaning up, you know there's no mineral buildup on the surface that's going to mess up your bluing. Quick recap here. This is the rifle we were working on, one of the barrels that we finished. Somebody asked in the comments about how long the cook time was. We cooked the barrels about 2 hours, and this barrel did not blue out quite as much in that first 2 hours. We threw them back in probably 20 minutes to a half hour maybe, so we got about 2.5 hours total cook time. Used to take 3 or 4, sometimes more. Depends on how many blotches and stains and stuff we had to fight with. I believe that the maple was so hot on this fire that I just was able to just keep feeding the wood to it. And this one being a little thicker in the breech was a little bit slower, but they came out great. The breech plugs look good at 2 hours. So cook time wise, keep using your breech plug as your test. Another question was, as far as how we pick them up, I use a piece of just standard thin weld wire. And what I do is just bend it up, bend it over, slip that through the barrel, and that gives you a handhold that you can pick up that's sticking out of the trough. I put 2 of them together, just simply put 2 hooks and attach them. I do not put any charcoal in the barrel. I don't see where that's an advantage, but if it works for you, cool. Do whatever works for you. As far as authentic, this is an old barrel off of French pistols. I hope you can see it's got a nice blued finish on the bottom. A little tougher to see, it's a little spottier on the top side, but that tells you what the durability is going to be. Colt 1911s are also fire blued or charcoal blued like that. And we had another nice comment about somebody saying about the furniture on doors and blanket chests. This is the door latch on my shop. And no, the scratches are not from apprentices that I locked in here. That's actually from the dog trying to get out when she wants to. That's the thing about a lever or a elbow latch like this. Our smart dog is sometimes trying to get out the door when she's not supposed to. But the bluing is really good. It's as much as I can zoom in. But you see the charcoal bluing that's lasted. That's almost 200 years old. And kind of gives you an idea. Zooming back to our gun. This is a rifle with finished up. It is ready to go. Pennsylvania style rifle, more like an Andreas Albrecht. He was a gunsmith, came over in the early 1700s, set up shop, Christian Springs. It's got a lot of carving details that follow some of that with the star. He was a Moravian. I call him a first generation gunsmith, not that he was the first one in his family, but when you have American gunsmiths that are coming to America and they're starting their craft, they're building things just like they did over in Europe. And I always like some of the Jaegers. You have first generation gunsmiths coming off, they're already trained and they're doing the same type of carving and detail work in their metal and the wood, except for in the wood section, they're using curly maple instead on their format rather than a standard European walnut. So just a few details of that. It's nice to have it finished. Case harden the lock. Some point we may do a little short tutorial on case hardening, but that's not coming today. So whole objective here, give this a shot. You can use it on different things. Maybe you're making door latches or something fun like that and you just want to do charcoal bluing. Now you have at least the basics of it. The key is make sure you don't have moisture. Take the breech plug out, use that as your test, no oil. We have done barrels that were browned in the past, and what we did is we scrubbed all the browning off. Sometimes you use a vinegar to help clean it, but then clean it up inside, stone all the rust off, and go back on it and charcoal blue it. So even if you're building a kit or whatever you're doing, scratch build, give this a try. It makes a super, super beautiful finish. And thanks for all the comments. I hope I answered everybody's questions. Bye, guys.